Hi, my name's Taylor McCarrow, and this is my literacy inquiry for our major assignment number 2 for teaching reading and writing across grade levels. So here I have my literacy inquiry question, which I had constructed in the beginning of this course, and it was something that I have thought about previously, even before this I was taking this course. Um, but some of the material that I had the opportunity to listen to and read in the beginning of this course kind of sparked that question again for me. And the question is, can heterogeneous grouping of students help below grade level elementary students overcome reading and writing barriers? So I had listened to a workshop through the Annenberg Readers, and it was on differentiating instruction and flexible grouping. So something that had stood out to me and made me very curious was that the woman had mentioned that there hasn't been a lot of research done on heterogeneous grouping and flexible grouping, and that researchers had planned to do more on it to figure out whether or not it is the best option in a classroom and the most beneficial to our students. Another thing that sparked this question was my current placement. So I'm in a Title I school district in South Jersey, and in my school district, we have many students who fall below grade level. Now, I believe over the last 2 years that some of the students were also put at a disadvantage due to the pandemic. We were remote learning, hybrid learning, back in school, out of school. It was very inconsistent, and it was difficult on these kids. I mean, they lost all social interaction for almost a full year, and then the year after we were remote, back forth, back forth. So I believe some of these students, were at a disadvantage throughout the pandemic, and it has caused a gap in some of our students, you know, in some of our students' learning. So that is what had sparked this question for me. Could heterogeneous grouping of students help the below grade level elementary students overcome those barriers? So the context of my instruction would be that in my classroom, where there's two teachers, a general education and a special education teacher, which is myself, we are in an inclusion setting, so there are two teachers in the room all day in third grade. There are 20 students, and 5 of those students have IEPs. We are in a Title I school district, as I had said, located in South Jersey, and the students would be grouped heterogeneously into 4 groups of 5. So since there are 20 students, there would be 5 students per group, 4 groups, and they'd all be grouped heterogeneously. So here we have the purpose, goals, and objectives. So the purpose of this intervention is to allow myself and other teachers to have the information necessary to better support their students when they are grouped. So again, there hasn't been much research that has been done on heterogeneous grouping, which is what had sparked this curiosity for me. I believe that teachers deserve this information in order to better support their students. And the goal is to create a more engaging learning environment for the below grade level students by grouping them heterogeneously. So, as we all know, especially as teachers who may even be in the same type of setting as me, or also even for those teachers that do just have a couple of the below grade level students present with them in their class, sometimes we find that our below grade level students become very disengaged because either A, they can't keep up with the material, or B, the material is below their maturity level. So they're becoming bored with it. It is also a goal for below grade level students to stay on task while collaborating in discussion during their small group time. The students will participate in heterogeneously grouped quick talk sessions where they will share their ideas and responses to questions asked about a text we have read as a whole group first, then independently, and then small groups. And then that independent read, for my students with IEPs, they would be receiving that text-to-speech feature. So here on our time, I've created a timeline, and of course, we all know as teachers, sometimes the way we plan things isn't how the outcome ends up being. but this is just kind of a general timeline. So from 10 to 10:20 would be the teacher guided read aloud, which would be the Paper Bag Princess. That was my book of choice. And throughout the read aloud, we'd also have some guided discussion as a whole group. From 10:20 to 10:25, I gave a 5-minute gap here for students to get situated. So students will break off into their assigned groups, which would be, they'd be heterogeneously grouped. My co-teacher and myself would choose their groups, and they would break off. From 10:25 to 10:55, they would participate in their small group discussions and collaborative work. So here is where I would have them work collaboratively and have those discussions. And the graphic organizer I will have them work on is a story element graphic organizer. So they'd be talking about the characters, major and minor characters, the setting, conflict resolution, theme, lesson, moral of the story, things like that. So my students are very familiar with story elements already. This isn't something new to them. So they would be comfortable working together, and they already have some background knowledge on it and this exact graphic organizer. So from 10:55 to 11:10, students would have the opportunity to share out their work as a group to the rest of their classmates and wrap up instruction. So at this point, I would give my students the opportunity to stand up, share their work with their classmates, and it was really cool to see my students and how excited they got about presenting, especially with different students that they normally do not work with. During our small group time, normally our students are grouped homogeneously, so they're working with those same students every day on a daily basis in guided writing and reading groups. This was something different for them, and I found it to be very beneficial, as I will talk about in my reflection. So after seeing my students grouped heterogeneously during this study and this inquiry, I realized that this is something that needs to be year-long. More data would need to be collected, benchmarks, research, tracking progress, all in order to see how exactly my students progress throughout the entire school year. You know, we are mid-year right now, and based on the research that I had done that had triggered all of these ideas, those researchers had conducted a year-long study. So it was an entire academic school year, and they had a beginning of a year benchmark, mid-year, end of year. They were constantly tracking the students' progress to see if they benefited from homogeneous or heterogeneous grouping. All the data was collected. So this is not something that would be one and done. I believe that this is something I'd need to continue to see. And again, I found the heterogeneous grouping to be very beneficial for my below grade level students. They seem to be more motivated to contribute to conversation and share their thoughts. Everyone was able to stay on task. My students were excited to learn. They were excited to work with new people. Those below grade level students, I just feel as though they felt included, and we have a really great group this year. So my students were all working collaboratively and respectful of each other, sharing their ideas. It was really awesome to see, and I do feel as though heterogeneous grouping could help some of my below grade level students overcome these barriers. They were pushed to think outside of the box. Some of my higher level students who are exceeding grade level right now were able to kind of push them to that next level and introduce them to vocabulary words and, just types of discussion that my below grade level students would have never had without them being present. So it was really awesome to watch. And then the questions that I was left with after everything was, will heterogeneous grouping help below grade level students overcome reading barriers if it were a regular routine? So I put this because, again, this type of study I feel as though would have to be a year-long study. So I'm wondering, if it was a regular routine, would the data show that these below grade level students were overcoming barriers? And also, will allowing my below grade level students benefit from being exposed to higher level comprehension that they may not quite understand at first? So even though my below grade level students may not really understand some of the discussion at first, will this open up new doors to them, and will they eventually benefit from it? So this is my literacy inquiry.